Please join us in 15 minutes in the Armory Theater for the future of the art market, a live recording of the art gallery featuring Megan Frostley, Eileen Summit, Suzanne Miller, and Eileen Summit.
like storage use.
No, I mean, at some point that will all be gone.
Oh yeah, that guy. I kind of like that. So we're gonna just do. We need to taste it.
Ghent, Bruges, and I'm from Ghent.
Yesterday, no, the day before yesterday.
Unbelievable.
I know.
Yes, and I haven't seen the whole picture of this. You were the best.
Can you send me?
So guys, listen, did you
And we have to get together.
Bahamas. We gotta tell Zoe.
I'll hold you when I'm you to look at silly, right? Can't continuously hold you. Yeah, I can't completely. I think that. so I tried to friend zone you yesterday. We also had it cut out.
Characteristically dehydrated.
They're in the magic lab. And they have big noses so they can smell the flowers. Big eyes. But he doesn't like it.
This is fine. Everything's fine. Now this is my favorite. Now this is my favorite.
Did you went to the gallery, right? So you there something that are there?
soak that vegetable. Take a picture of this. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe. Yeah, but I yeah, I'm an artist too. I work with same thing with a curator. I have my own work. I'm gonna help everyone. Today from 5 to 6. That is really neat.
That's why they still teaching the parents out there. They're just like group on the page. But I know what they do on the other side of the science and
It's just no, it's like
Yeah, lots of like wild colors. It's almost like to kind of think about this is an awful color. But I love it. Like I think in your mind at any given time is out on one canvas. You know?
Yeah, it's like visualization of
yeah, it's in my mind I just think it's like anxiety.
yeah, she's 29 and she used to do a lot of illustration.
Yeah, it's very skilled. This is so much fun.
That size.
and then
You go more established.
So that it could be included yeah, so these are all.
Includes advising clients on acquisitions and sales of works of art for their collections, estate planning and execution, strategic planning and feasibility studies for museums, exhibition planning and administration, collection management, and fine art appraisal services. Suzanne Bielmetter is the founder and director of Bielmetter Los Angeles. Since founding this gallery in 2000, she has been committed to presenting artists from a wide range of diverse backgrounds with a focus on idea-based and political work. Alain Survey is a collector.
This fair for over 20 years. I'm not entirely sure how qualified I am to talk about the future, but I've been having a gallery for a long time, and I've seen many ups and downs in the art market, and so I'm excited to be on the panel, and thank you so much for having me.
Great, thank you. Megan. Thank you, Eileen. I'm here too because of the fair, and enjoyed the first opening day and seeing everything, bringing clients here. It's part of our job.
Like we had someone doing shoes by hand and everything. So a gallerist was, I think, at the time, and Suzanne, like me, is coming from that time, to something that is becoming industrialized, and where the process is more important, and particularly two important processes: the branding. Sometimes the branding of the gallery is bigger than the branding of the artists. And the second is the importance of the economies of scale. Two very important elements is that doing so many fairs, having so many fixed costs, means that if you don't manage to spread out your costs, and spreading out your costs means that if you build the brands, you can spread it out to different cities, to different countries, to a multiplicity of artists. So it becomes an industry, and that's a massive change, because the danger of all this, and that's where maybe we're going to get at one point, is that the arts, which was something creative and original, is becoming commodified. You know, it's the same arts that is the demand at one point and is repeated over and over again. So that's a little bit the basic observation I'm starting from.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to kick off with was to take a little bit of a look back. Like when I first started writing about art, it was in the late Natalie Crow, because she has really carved out an amazing feat there. But over the years, it has gone from, you know, me there worrying about what to write about to just not being able to keep up with the sheer amount of growth in galleries, growth in art fairs. You know, we did mention mega galleries, like that there's too much to write about. We can barely keep up on a daily basis about like what lawsuit we're going to cover or what art fair. I'm curious, like through the lens for each of you, how that shift has happened and how like a day today differs than what it was when you first opened up in Los Angeles. And Suzanne has been there for over 30 years in Los Angeles. That's another question we'll get to.
Of course, yeah. I mean, just the sheer amount of activity that's being asked from us as dealers is often overwhelming. So very often, I see there's some dealers here who have a booth and two other project solo booths at this fair and perhaps simultaneously at another fair. We in Los Angeles just opened one solo show, then we all rushed here for the fair. When we come back, we open two more solo shows because we have usually 3 simultaneous exhibitions going on. Every night we go to a dinner or to a collector's home. Very often in the morning I have breakfasts with artists. All of that is a little, it's like multiple times of what we used to do. It's also, from a gallery point of view, necessary to be able to stay competitive. In the very big picture, I find it difficult to think that inherently there is something wrong with a very vibrant and huge art market. It becomes more challenging to navigate it because there's so much more to see, and people get insecure because they don't know. There are so many choices. What should I buy, or what should I even look at? But if you look at it from a point of view of a large historical arc of successful civilizations, the ones that were leaning heavily on art production and making art and looking at art and selling art were not the ones that failed. You know, we could spend a lot of money on making war. So I prefer it this way. I think we're all sometimes exhausted and we're complaining and we don't know what to do and what to look at. But overall, I think it's maybe helpful to remember that all of this is a very good thing. I don't think there has ever been that much culture and art.
The volume has magnified, and it has even more so, I think, since 2020, when the need for more digital forms of communication in order to stay present, in order to know what the Gilmeister, gallery is doing, or any other gallery around the world. So the volume of communications that come in, the volume of information that comes in, can be overwhelming. But part of our job, you know, as an advisory firm is to filter and create discernment around, you know, create a hierarchy really of the levels of information that are coming in that are relevant to our clients. And of course, every client is different. Every client's goals, tastes, interests are different. So it's tailoring that information, you know, for each of them. But I have to agree with Suzanne that the expansion of the art market is not all bad. It is in the sense that it perhaps creates confusion. But more and more people are reading about art, hearing about art, seeing, you know, getting emails and getting, you know, information about the art market. And more people are curious. And while definitely much of what we read about is the 1% of the 1%, you know, economically, I think that there are, again, lots of different levels that people are able to engage in art. It doesn't all have to be the record-breaking, you know, painting at auction that makes you a part of the art world or a part of the art market. It's engagement, just like this, you know, this Saturday here at this fair.
I entered the arts without any background into it from Wall Street. I started my career down the line here in 1987. And I entered art because it kind of broadened my view of the world. Because, you know, when you're Wall Street, you've got a very narrow view of the world. And we were not talking about money. So what changed in the last 20 years is that we only speak about money. And Megan is saying yes to me about many things I'm saying, so it's the truth as well. So what changed dramatically is the amount of money. Again, I don't like generalizations and heuristic statements about the beauty of the art and everything. The reality is the following. I made an analysis back a few years ago. I looked at contemporary art, defined as art created by artists born after 1960. In 2005, the total amount of contemporary art auction around the world was $48 million in 2005. $48 million. I could not believe when I saw that figure. In 2008, so only 3 years later, the same question was $860 million. So it multiplied by 23 in 3 years. So it's very easy to speak about it's just more information, it's just more this. No, it happened something very big. Is that something happened between 2005 and 2008, is that the amount of money getting in art went from 48 to 860, I'm talking about contemporary. This is changing everything, because before that, nobody cared about art. You know, I'm collecting for 25 years, Suzanne, active in there too, and nobody cared, nobody spoke about art, nobody thought, you know, about reselling in many ways. You know, I attended the transformation of the art market with people like Philip Segallo, Dominic Levy, Amy Capelazzo, that brought for the very first time contemporary art into the auction house. I saw the first Basquiat selling for $1 million around 2005, and it was supposed to be a con because it was supposed to be a fake thing. So the enormous transformation that happened is that money came in and ruled. This money is coming, you know, what is very important is that art for me is nothing outside of the general society. You know, it's just a tiny reflection of society at large. What's changing society at large is the concentration of wealth. You are all aware of it, all of you here. So what happened is that the concentration of wealth among the 1% and the even more in the 0.1% grew bigger. And this 0.1% bought fancy cars, secondary real estate, and they started buying art. And the drama for art was that as they didn't know nothing about art, they bought art like they used to buy something else, which was fashionable and social recognition. Which means that the art became a secondary element versus the social recognition and the investment potential. And I would like just to remind one thing, is that I came into arts following, you know, a description like Hans Rehobry said one day. And I really think about this definition. Hans Rehobry said art is the best defense against annihilation by standardization. I repeat, the best defense against annihilation by standardization. The problem is that today most of the art is commodified, it's the same. And I'll be simply honest. On this fair, there's so many paintings that looks like the painting in next booth that is frightening, okay? So we need to go back to a definition of art, and that is what of my difficulty for the future is how can we preserve art in the context of the art market industrialization. So I repeat, I came into art to escape money, and now I'm trying to push back money out of my beloved art.
I have to agree with Ellen a lot. That is the only measure of what's going on. The auctions in May have nothing to do with what Suzanne is doing at her gallery. It has nothing to do with, you know, the private sales that may or may not be going on from the auction houses and from the galleries, but the headers and the drivers, the sort of, sorry, but like the clickbait on articles and emails and everything else. It's all about, you know, something with a dollar sign or a euro sign in front of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, and there is a pressure for us to cover auctions very carefully because they are really the only public barometer. Like we could walk around and ask prices here and get a sense of what's selling and what's popular, but yeah, I mean, it's ArtNet's bread and butter, plus we run an auction database, so for better or for worse, we go to them, we track them carefully, and one of the things that Katya wrote in her column that I thought was very interesting when she wrote about Garden City recently was that, yeah, things are down a little bit last year, but the Maclo collection is a once-in-a-lifetime collection that you're never going to see again. I mean, it was the result of a contentious divorce.
Exactly.
The masterpieces they had, so it is issues of cycles and it's issues of supply and demand, so it's not necessarily, not even a negative thing, but I mean, you have Paul Allen's collection and Maclo in 1 year. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of a dip after that. That's my 2 cents about the auction.
Yeah, but you're talking about the Paul Allen collection, and one of the big problems, and we're talking about your profession, Eileen, is that you started from the Wall Street Journal, so that's interesting. You came into art and then you forgot everything you learned in the Wall Street Journal.
Not necessarily, no.
I think you did. Because the thing is that in the Paul Allen collection sales, the most interesting was what could we learn about it, about the fact that art is a very bad investment. You know why?
Why?
Because in that sales, there was about 60 works and about 30 of them were resale, which means that we know at what price he bought them at auction. Okay? So if you look at the 30 lots of this major collector, the best of the best with the most money, and the fact that it's only his best works, because of course the shit works, he cannot sell them at auction. I mean, they're still there somewhere under the mattress, and you're gonna have to put them on the sidewalk to get rid of them, okay? So, I'm serious, okay? It's only the best, okay? But in that best, in the 30 words, the average holding period, so the average number of years that you had to keep them was 15 years. It's not a short-term investment, okay? 15. And the average return you made on those 15 years of holding was something around 7% on the 30 lots. Okay, 7%, that's 3% under the S&P on that period. Okay, so honestly, it's a shit investment.
To look at those numbers, I actually do monitor the withdrawn lots very carefully, and also I've done a ton of reporting on guarantees and how much that came to the market and how much speculation that introduces. So I'm well aware of that. I try to be transparent about that when I'm covering auctions.
Yeah, but
I would like to say something in response to what you said. You mentioned that everything is about money and nobody knows. You seem to imply that nobody knows the real art or what art means anymore, and that we need to redefine art. I would like to say something to that. I do think that we're actually in the very middle of a major redefinition of art. Insofar, and this is the most radical change that I have seen in 23 years. I have wanted this for 23 years, and it is actually happening now. And that is that art is being redefined simply through the fact that the art world, the artists, the art market, the art buyers
has become hugely more diverse. And what that means is that that traditional understanding that we used to have of art, which was incredibly Eurocentric, it was incredibly male-centric, that through the pandemic has actually finally broken up. And there is a huge influx of new voices, of new opinions through social media that's coming in and flooding the market. And of course, that makes traditional positions unstable and insecure, and it should. I think this was long overdue to happen. It's happening now, and I think it is something that we should welcome and that should give us the motivation to actually go back and learn and look. And you know, I go through the fairs, I have my long established categories, my internal categories about how to discern what is good, what is quality, what is it that my clients should buy, what is it that I should show. And all of this right now is in flux. And the old parameters are not working anymore. And I think it's high time that we all go back and learn and listen. There are so many new voices now out there, and it always starts with the artists, but there are new collectors out there. They come in with a very different agenda. They come in with a very different worldview, and I think it's a worldview that we all sorely need, because we're right now a little bit in the process of destroying our world, and that is what's happening. Yeah, there are very wealthy people who only talk about money and they buy a lot of art. That has always been the case. I cannot think of a historical point in time where art was not bought by wealthy people. That has always been the case. At the same time, I don't think there has ever been a time where art has been accessible for not so wealthy people, and that's also happening right now. So I feel, again, what I said earlier, right now I think it's the time for celebration and for conversation and for widening and learning, widening our horizon and learning. And that's at least what I'm focusing on.
That's a very important point, but would you call it, because you said, oh, we are in a new definition of art, but you didn't define it in other way, that it's a broader appeal, if I'm right? So
I would say it has to be a definition that is different, that has a different point of view, a more inclusive point of view, and a point of view that isn't so much looking to our European history. What that new definition is, I cannot tell you, because we're still, I think right now we're all in a process of searching. And that I don't think is a bad thing.
As a collector, can I help you? Maybe you will help me to tell me if I'm right or wrong, because it's easy to speak in terms of popularization of art, okay, meaning a broader appeal. It's fine. And it's overdue in terms of that. It's always striking me. A movie like The Square, the famous The Square, the movie that was supposed to speak about the art market, won the Golden Palm in Cannes, got 10,000 lines in every magazine in the world. The total revenue of that movie after 5 years around the world was $40 million, okay? So it is supposed to be elitist because nobody goes to watch it. Barbie does $1.5 billion in 1 month. So do we have to go to Barbie to broaden the appeal of the arts? Or do we have to agree that art is about making us think differently, or maybe starting to make us think? Because the society, the way it's structured, is about not making us thinking, just giving us impulse, you know, a little bit of adrenaline here, a little like on Instagram, a little compliment there, a little this or that, you know, or does it has to push us outside of our comfort zone? And the problem is that there's only a minority of people, it doesn't matter now or previously, there's only a minority of people that like to be challenged and put outside of their comfort zone. The same about dressing differently, about eating different food, about going on holiday somewhere else than the Hamptons, and so on, and so on, and so on. So it's simply about being different. So me, I'm defending the art that pushes people to go outside of their comfort zone. And the one that you're broadening the appeal, because when you say, when you're defining it yourself, oh, one thing is sure, I don't want the definition, the Eurocentric definition of the past. This made me think, to be honest and to be very blunt, about the kind of thing, the movement I hear in politics against the institutions. All I want to be is that this institution, the way it works, doesn't work anymore. This is called populism.
Both. I'm not saying everybody needs to make, you know, the artist should be making work that everybody loves and, you know, that takes 3 seconds to understand. And if anybody knows anything about my gallery, they also know that my program stands for the absolute opposite of all of this. We have never shown what everybody wanted at the time. That's the reason why I also am not having a gallery in Hong Kong, Zurich, London, and who knows where. I have a gallery in LA. Yet, I would not have the opinion that what I do as a gallerist is simply, because I do it, quality, and what other galleries are doing is simply not so great, or what other artists are doing. There's room for everything. You know, if somebody likes conceptual, intellectual, political work that derives from a long Western European tradition, they, you know, can fall in love with that and they can follow that. What I fundamentally find problematic, and that all of that is actually breaking up right now, is that our past has been defined by these parameters of quality, and the people who set the parameters of what good art is and what not so good art is happened accidentally to be the people who were also always in power. And all of that is breaking up.
I'm curious, with so much information coming at you and, you know, your view of like this heavy focus on financialization, how do you make decisions about what you like and what you're going to acquire and live with, what, like especially in this day and age now?
It's, you know, one of my mentors, Amanda Letty, eventually saw this connection to the MoMA, an extremely important conceptual art collection. He said, you know, the difficulty with contemporary art is that you need to clean yourself up of fashion. So it's a continuously mental exercise about saying, oh, this is what everybody likes, this is what every gallerist is throwing at me, and this is what I need to clean up, okay? So when you go, it's the same as going to a shopping mall. You know, it's about, will I go for the same T-shirt as everybody? But everybody wears it, so you know, I'm gonna look cool with that T-shirt or those shoes or whatever. So the first effort is really a mental exercise to clean yourself up. Where I clean myself up very much is in the museums and the biennials, which means I start from there. Okay, so I do a lot of them because those curators, very often, they know their job. They've been studying for a long time. They do more research than me. They visit more studios, artists than me. Like some galleries do, except the galleries, they've got to bring to the fair what they will sell because they paid $50,000 to $70,000. They have no choice. They must show what will sell. Not sometimes what they like, what they sell. I see it, for example, here from my European colleagues. I mean, all of them are sometimes conceptual galleries. They bring only paintings in New York because they say, you need to bring paintings to sell. So, it's fashion, okay? So the first thing is cleaning up myself by going to biennials and things. And I'll give you an example. After leaving this, I'm going to meet Pepon Osorio, who I discovered at the new museum, this fantastic exhibition for a new museum. and I will probably buy one of the work that is currently in the museum, okay? And you know, it's a different way of approaching, but we need to resist the market.
More than you can even work with. Like you have to set a cap on who you work with and make decisions about what their goals and intentions are.
I do have to set a cap because there's only so much capacity you have, you know, just to serve the people who are relying on you. So I do set a cap, and it usually has to do with their goals. But I think that for myself and for other advisors that I know, people come to me, people come to them because they sort of have a sense of, you know, how it is that I work, how I run my business, and with some conversations, you discover what their goals are and whether your goals meet up. I don't tend to get or attract that collector who says, you know, I want to buy things and sell things and I want to make money in the market. That's like not my guy or not my girl, right? They just don't come to me. It's more people who want to learn, people who are curious, or people who know a lot but who want to, you know, work on more, you know, refining their collection, expanding it in certain ways. And so, you know, it's a lot of what Suzanne and Ellen were just saying. Continuous learning is one of the foundations of my practice. It's what I also tell all the staff who work with me. It's the thing that we have to always be doing. And it's easy, especially when you've been around as long as I've been, to sort of sit back and rely on those things that you feel that you know. And you make certain assumptions, right? And so experience might inform how I advise, but I try to approach every, you know, biennial, every exhibition, every art fair, every, you know, auction season with a certain amount of, maybe this is what you were saying, cleansing yourself, and then, you know, a certain openness and almost pretending at naivete, right? Because then you are actually allowing yourself to look at something for the first time and being more open to it and trying to look at it through the lens of the collector whose goals you're looking to meet, right? So it's not about me or what I like or what my taste is or what my biases are or anything like that. It's really about me putting me away and looking through their eyes and trying to find the things that will make the most sense for them. Going back to what we said in the very beginning, what's changed and the volume of information that comes, I think that's where it gets tricky. Because you have all this coming in, and how do you create, you know, for yourself a prioritization about what you're going to look at and pay attention to?
I would like to add something to that, because the amount of information has so incredibly increased. Of course, the act of filtering or curating or selecting from this mountain of information has also become much more important. And there, I think, there are so many different ways how you can go about it, and that I find very exciting. Again, I think fundamental change there again is, and I see that everywhere. I see it in the institutions, I see it sometimes in the private collections, I definitely see it in the programs that galleries show, that there has been a shift away from I go by standards of what I have learned what quality means by a few experts in the art world who define that, or to much more acute awareness of inequalities that have long persisted in the art world, inequalities that have long persisted actually in our society, and that there is somehow all of a sudden now, and this, you know, it's perhaps difficult to understand for people that this was not there before the pandemic, that there's a new consciousness about what, at least amongst galleries and museums,
what is our responsibility in terms of providing a aesthetic experience to our audience? Should have some sort of connection with the makeup of the audience and where they're coming from and what experience they can actually relate to. I think that's a very important change that's happening right now and that I very much welcome.
That's great. And just to pivot a little bit, Suzanne, you and I were talking, you know, I'm kind of fascinated with the expansion, the rapid expansion that's happening in LA, and there seems like there's so much energy there, and a lot of big names coming in. But you were commenting the other day about how you feel like each different size gallery can play a role in an artist's career, and kind of like that there's room for everyone in the art ecosystem, even though I think there's a lot of competition.
Right.
You can talk a little bit about that.
Well, as you probably all have gathered, I like to have a pretty positive outlook on things. But I think this ties very much into what you said, Elaine. Of course, there's this, because the art market has grown so hugely, there's some galleries who have grown enormously, and there's always this, you know, talk about that the biggest galleries are eating up everybody else, and that they're, you know, that all of this has turned into this super corporate business and all of that. All of that is true, and all of that is, of course, problematic. I do see hope, because I'm a hopeful and optimistic person. I do think that sometimes people get overwhelmed and they forget that the art market is not a machine or a beast that does whatever it does. The art market is us. And I think the crucial pinnacle of the art market is actually the artist. So if an artist is put in a position where they're being told you can only succeed if at some point you go with the 5 biggest galleries, we all know who they are, then that, of course, creates a very difficult situation for the rest of the artists who will never get to that point, and also very much to the art buyers who will never be able to afford those prices. And most of all to the rest of us galleries, because we will be then condemned to basically do the expensive work of building the careers, and once there's money to be made, the artists get picked, like we're the plum trees ready for the picking, and the money is being made somewhere else. Interesting point in time where some collectors are realizing that maybe it was a revolutionary act to buy work from Hauser and Wirth 10 years ago. Is that really that revolutionary right now? In the same way that maybe your super cool Prada outfit from 20 years ago was really, you know, cutting edge. If you buy it now, is that really so cutting edge? So there are more and more artists who are realizing every gallery at every stage can actually bring something useful to my career. This very young gallery that will never be able to pay my production costs can still connect me with a young audience that is at the very cutting edge of the tomorrow conversation. The mid-career gallery can be maybe the gallery that I grew up with, that I trust the most, that I can cry my eyes out when my partner leaves me, and they will always be there for me. The mega gallery could perhaps be that gallery that pays if I should be selected to have the US Pavilion in Venice. They could swoop in and pay the production costs for that. So more and more artists are realizing that perhaps it doesn't have to be this either-or situation. Perhaps they can, and the artists are the ones who have the power to negotiate that. And more artists are actually doing that. It's the same for collectors. Perhaps, you know, you get your ego tickled to the core that
the senior sales director of Gagosian actually talks to
What
you.
is the following? There was that study of Sotheby's saying that the works of art for $1 million and plus represent 70% of the art market. 70%. Are you selling works of art above $1 million or around? No. Okay. So it's not concerning you. So it means that the market is 70% of this. Because we're talking about the market here. We're not talking about the heuristic pleasure of art and the whole thing. We're talking about the art market. Is it, Eileen? It's about the art market, huh? It's not about art today. The subject. Eileen, the subject is about the art market.
But we make the art market. I mean, if we all now say we will never ever buy a work of art again, what's the art market gonna do?
No, we're talking about the future of the art market. So the future of the art market is that concentration is among those players, okay? And the thing is, what will happen, because this art that you're describing in a very heuristic way is under threat. And that's where we end up agreeing, even if probably we don't agree on that kind of art. But that's exactly the same threat.
Appreciate some of the optimism, so I'm, trying to mediate here. But we're going to wrap it up. But we have about 10 minutes left for questions. So if anybody has any questions. Okay, go ahead.
Hi. I'm pretty loud. I don't think I need it, but.
It's recorded for our minutes, so they're to your voice.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It's very interesting. I thought the point about museums was really interesting as well. I wanted to kind of open it up and talk a bit about how the art market is also shaping museums in a new way. I remember, before COVID, there was an exhibition at Tate which was sponsored by White Cube of one of their artists, and it was coincidentally at the same time they also had a show of that artist at White Cube and at the Tate at the same time. So maybe you could speak a bit more to how galleries have started to kind of shape also the museum over and exhibitions, and maybe has that kind of created a new space in the museum to kind of influence the art market or use it to boost sales, which I find also kind of, is that contrary to what a museum is, or is that kind of a sign of the times?
Did you want me to answer that question? You go first.
I think it depends on what the exhibition is or was, and whether you know how it began. So very often galleries are needing to support, or even artist endowed foundations are needing to support exhibitions, by their artists, because there's only so much money that the museum itself can raise. So the question is, I think the root of the question is, did the impetus for the show come from the curator who really wanted to do that exhibition about that artist and do the book and do the tour and everything else, and the gallery happened to sponsor it? Or did the gallery go to the museum and say, we want to show this artist? And I think we'd have to look at every single specific case, because many of the artist endowed foundations that I advise are, and because that's the other part of what I do, are asked to help and support exhibitions that museums are driving.
So the responsibility of our politicians to accept that principle, because they say very often, even in Europe, say, oh, culture is for the rich, so they should take care of that by themselves. It's a big mistake, because of course, culture, when we agree again, is for everyone. The thing is that because the public authorities are not there, the private gets in, and the private is the galleries. And then we go back to my thesis about the question, which is the initial question of that panel, is what's the future of the art market? And I spoke about industrialization. this industrialization implies consolidation of art fairs, consolidation of galleries. The galleries become bigger and bigger. I spoke about the 70%, the small amount of the smaller galleries on that thing, and it happens the same way, that they poach as well the artists of the biggest quality that the smaller galleries are presenting as well. So it's an evolution which is worrying and that must be countered in some way. But in the case of the museum, it's only through public funding that it could happen.